So Sicilian defense, and this is Alapin variation c3, and white is going to push the pawn to d4. So e6, and let's push the pawn. So white has built a very strong connected center pawn. That's very nice. d5, e5. So now the game turned into French defense. That's very interesting. Taking the pawn. That's not the best move. The best move is keeping the tension at the center and move the knight, queen b6 later to adding pressure. For example, knight e7, knight f5. And the reason it's not good timing that black take the pawn is because after the trade, white can move knight to c3. Otherwise, knight doesn't have like c3 to go. c3 is a very good square for the knight, where the knight can get close to the center. So taking the pawn is not the best move. h6. This move is a little bit surprising to me. I don't know what is the purpose of this move, to be honest. Maybe guarding g5, but I mean, white cannot move the bishop to g5 anyway, so I don't know. It's a little bit wasting a move, and also I don't see the the reasoning behind these two moves, exchanging the pawn and h6. Knight c3, that's good, control the center. a6, defending b5. I don't think that makes sense neither. I think from my perspective, I would develop pieces, yeah, as quickly as I can. And white develop the knight, and also I think develop bishop is better, because if you look at the positioning of the light square bishop and the g1 knight, and the knight can go to maybe e to f4 or e to g3. So the knight is more flexible than the bishop. Because if you look at the light square bishop, I would say these two squares are impossible to go. So, and d3, this is a square the bishop has most like competence to control as many squares as it can. So bishop d3, I think that's better, is the best place. Bishop e2 is a little bit passive. So in this case, I mean, we can move the bishop first because it's more like determined that bishop should be placed there. And later, if like maybe, for example, we can move the knight to e2 and or knight f3, depending on how the game develop. And also knight f3, a little bit blocking our f pawn. And in this pawn structure, it's very likely that white will launch attack at the king side, because white has much more space at the king side. So pushing the f pawn is a very good way to create pawn break. So I would say leaving the space for the f pawn is a good idea. So yeah, so knight f3 is not a mistake. It's just we can play that later, or maybe some other place for the knight. Knight e7, bishop d3 is good. Knight to c6, bishop e3, defending the pawn. And also, as I said, it's very likely that white will launch attack at the king side. Since we already kind of blocked the f pawn, so maybe pushing this two pawn, any of these pawns, is something we can go. And also, I'm pretty sure the knight will go to g6 or f5 for the e7 knight. So maybe g4, h4, h5, we can expand our space at the king side. And we don't need to worry much about like exposing our king at the king side, because as I said, we have so much space at the king side, and I don't think black can attack our king side in any way, because the light square bishop is blocked. The dark square bishop cannot attack our this diagonal, so we are quite safe on the king side. So maybe h4 and like g4, g5, or h5, g4, g5, or h5, rook to g3, attack g7. We can develop the rook in this way. So yeah, so I will push the king side pawn to like create a pawn break. So bishop e7, knight f5, castle, queen e2. So white should think about a way to launch attack. And so in this case, you put now it's hard to push h4 because black has these 3 pieces targeted h4. g4 is not good because knight h4. Yeah, the dark squares will be controlled. It's very hard to push the pawn. So what can we do? Can we take the knight? And this d5 pawn is a little bit weak. Queen b3. Bishop east. Can we take the pawn? Maybe not. Knight a5. Our queen is trapped. Okay, so how can we attack our opponent? That's a question. Or maybe we can move the knight to g3 to kind of exchange. And after exchanging the knight, somehow we can move the knight to d2 and f4, f5. I'm still thinking how to create pawn break. But the first thing is we need to get rid of the f6 knight. Maybe knight e2, knight g3, exchanging the knight, and later remove of f3 knight, and then f4, f5. So now we feel like this f3 knight is a little bit blocking our f pawn. Queen e2, castle, rook c1. I assume we want to control the open file. That's also a good idea. And that means we want to attack the queen side. But it's a little bit hard to attack on the queen side because, for example, these 2 squares are controlled by black bishop. And our dark square bishop is blocked. And also black has same space because if you look at the d pawn, so black doesn't have far less space than us at the queen side, so it's a little bit hard to fight at the queen side. Knight a4. Oh, I think that's a mistake. I'm pretty sure black can find some way to discover attack. What about knight d4? Take. Yeah, I think black can win the pawn. And black played knight b4, attacking our knight, and also exchanging of the bishop. Oh, we lose a knight. We lost this knight. So we should move the knight back, I think, and also protecting a2. And we will lose the light square bishop. It's a very powerful bishop, but at least we don't lose material. But after losing the knight, it's really hard to play. Bishop b5, we'll lose another material. Yeah, rook fe1, avoid being skilled. This is important. Knight b3. It's good that we're trying to control the c5, but it's really hard to do. Now I don't think we have a chance. Yeah, and we lose the knight. Oh no, queen d1 is good, but yeah, it's really hard. Okay, I don't think we need to work through the rest of the game. So I think, of course, losing the knight is the point that we knight a4. Yeah, of course, this is the move. We lost material and therefore lost the game. But it also showcased at the queen side, it's a little bit hard for us to fight. And also it's easier for black because if you look at the light square bishop, it's pretty stuck at the king side, but it has a rather long diagonal at the queen side. And that's also the reason we lost the knight, because this square is controlled. So in advanced variation of French defense, we need to find out a way to attack on the king side. And it's better that we think about it from long term, which means at the beginning, we need to think about how should we position our pieces. And pushing the f pawn is a very good way. For example, d3, and knight e2, and f4. So just as simple as that. For example, let's move a couple of like pieces. Bishop to, I don't know, bishop to b4 or maybe knight d7 with castle. And if knight to f5, we can move bishop to e3. This bishop is less useful than light square bishop, because this light square bishop has a lot more space to control, but this dark square bishop is more like defensive because it has the same color, plays the same color as our pawns at center. So it's fine that if black take our bishop. If take that, I'm actually happy about that, because open the semi-open file. We can like attack the center with e4, and also we can maneuver pieces to attack f7. So most likely I don't think black will take the bishop if bishop to e7. And f4 is not possible, but I'm thinking, how can we move the knight to g3? Now it's the d4 pawn is under attack. Maybe bishop c2. It's very straightforward. The castle. And what about knight? Knight g3 is good, and knight f4 is also good. But let's try knight g3. Exchange with the knight. Knight take our bishop probably. We take that with the pawn. And we want to attack the king side. And maybe bishop to g5 to attack our pawn. And we can play queen to f3. And maybe knight b4 to attack our bishop. We move bishop to b3. Well, maybe at the beginning, before knight g3, we can move the rook first, because once knight to b4, we can move the bishop to b1 without like worrying block our rook. And also this is open file. Even though we will launch our attack at the king side, it's still like good that we can control this open file. And maybe better play bishop d7. Well, bishop d7 is a mistake, because we can take d5. The bishop blocked the d file. So maybe b5, bishop b7, and rook c. I can still take that. And then knight f4. Yes. We can attack d5, maybe bishop to e6, and a queen to f3, adding another attacker. So this is quite good. Maybe knight b4 doesn't work, a3, and we can win the pawn. This could be one way to attack the center. If black take the bishop and the bishop d7, and we can still move the knight to f4, for example rook ca, we can actually attack this diagonal. As I said, since we have very great space at the king side, it's also hard for black to maneuver pieces to defend h7. Knight g6, we can sacrifice, and f4 we take, and so on. Yeah, look at this diagonal. It's really hard for black to defend. Maybe bishop to ea, and if we put queen d3 and the g6, the bishop can defend the pawn. Queen f3. What about rook ca? And white can, so knight h5, and also queen g3, and also we can double the rook to attack the f7. Yeah, and also maybe queen f4, knight f6, take queen h6 after rook to f3. So we will find a way to attack the king, and that's the best direction to go. That's it.